Mia stepped into the old wing of Crestwood Hospital, clutching her flashlight tightly. The rain outside pounded against the windows, and the power was flickering. The hallway stretched ahead, dimly lit and eerily silent. She had come to retrieve a misplaced patient file, a simple task that had now turned into a nightmare. This part of the hospital had been closed for years. Rumors of accidents and strange occurrences surrounded it, but Mia never believed in ghosts. Tonight, however, she wasn't so sure. As she walked deeper into the corridor, her footsteps echoed unnaturally, as if someone were walking just behind her. "Mia," she whispered to herself, trying to stay calm, "get the file and get out." Suddenly, she heard a faint sound, soft humming, like a lullaby. It was coming from one of the rooms. She froze, her heart pounding. The tune was hauntingly familiar, but she couldn't place where she'd heard it before. "Hello," she called out, her voice trembling. No answer. A cold breeze brushed past her, even though the windows were sealed shut. Her flashlight flickered, and in that brief darkness, she thought she saw a shadow dart across the hallway. She turned quickly, but there was nothing there. Determined to finish her task, she quickened her pace. Then, out of nowhere, the door she had entered through slammed shut with a deafening bang. She ran back to it, pulling on the handle, but it wouldn't budge. Panic set in. "Mia, Mia," a voice whispered her name, faint but unmistakable. It came from the end of the hallway, where the shadows seemed to grow darker. Her breathing quickened as she tried to convince herself it was her imagination. As she turned back to the path ahead, she saw something that made her blood run cold. A figure stood at the far end of the hallway. It was tall, motionless, and shrouded in shadow. Its face was obscured, but Mia felt its eyes piercing through her. She blinked, and the figure was gone. A loud crash echoed from a nearby room, followed by the sound of something dragging along the floor. Every instinct told her to run, but her legs felt frozen. The hospital was no longer just an old building, it was alive, and it wanted her to stay. Mia's hands trembled as she moved away from the locked door. Her flashlight flickered again, casting long, shifting shadows on the cracked walls. The cold air seemed to press against her skin, and with every step, the humming grew louder. It wasn't coming from one direction, it was everywhere, circling her. "Stay calm," she whispered to herself, her voice shaky. "It's just an old building." The hallway stretched on endlessly, with doors on either side. Most were closed, but one near the end was slightly ajar. A faint light spilled out, flickering like a dying bulb. Despite her fear, Mia's curiosity drew her closer. As she approached the door, she felt a cold breath on the back of her neck. She spun around, but no one was there. The humming stopped abruptly, replaced by a chilling silence. Then, faint whispers began to echo, as though people were talking just out of reach. "Mia," her name was whispered again, soft but unmistakable. She gasped and stepped back, bumping into the door. It creaked open, revealing a room filled with overturned beds and scattered medical equipment. On one of the beds, the sheets were moving, slowly rising and falling, as if someone were breathing underneath them. Her heartbeat thundered in her ears. "Hello," she called, her voice barely a whisper. The sheets stopped moving. The room fell deathly silent. For a moment, Mia thought she had imagined it, but then the sheets slid off the bed, as if pulled by invisible hands. She stumbled back, tripping over a fallen chair. The flashlight rolled out of her hand, its beam landing on the far corner of the room. There, crouched in the shadows, was a figure. It didn't look human. Its limbs were long and thin, and its face was hidden in darkness. Before she could move, the figure darted across the room, faster than anything she had ever seen. The door slammed shut behind it, leaving her alone in the dark. Mia scrambled for her flashlight, her breathing ragged. As she picked it up, the whispers started again, louder this time. They were coming from the walls, the ceiling, the floor, all around her. She knew now that she wasn't alone. Something was in the hospital with her, and it was watching. Mia's pulse raced as she fled the whispers, stumbling into an old stairwell. The air was damp and heavy, and the faint smell of rust and decay filled her nose. The steps creaked loudly under her weight, each sound echoing in the empty hospital. At the bottom of the stairs, she found herself in what looked like a storage basement. It was darker here, the flashlight barely cutting through the shadows. Her eyes scanned the room, landing on a large door at the far end. Above it hung a faded sign, *surgical wing. Hesitant but desperate to find a way out, Mia pushed the door open. The room was massive, with rows of old operating tables, broken equipment, and rusty tools scattered across the floor. The walls were covered in stains that looked suspiciously like blood. She felt a chill as she noticed a single table in the center of the room. Unlike the others, this one was clean and covered with a white sheet. Something, or someone, was lying beneath it. Mia's instinct screamed at her to turn back, but her legs carried her forward. She reached the table and slowly pulled the sheet back. Her breath caught in her throat. There was no body, but the outline of a person was still indented into the mattress. A sudden crash echoed behind her. She spun around, her flashlight beam bouncing wildly. A metal tray had fallen to the floor, though no one was there to knock it over. Then she heard it, the unmistakable sound of breathing. Deep, raspy breaths filled the room, but she couldn't see the source. "Who's there?" she demanded, her voice shaking. The light flickered again, and for a split second, she saw a figure standing in the corner. It wore a blood-stained hospital gown, its head tilted unnaturally to the side. Mia backed away, her flashlight trembling in her hands. "Please," she whispered, "leave me alone." The figure didn't move, but its head snapped upright, and a chilling smile spread across its face. The breathing grew louder, and the room seemed to close in around her. The door slammed shut, trapping her inside. A voice whispered directly into her ear, "You're part of the hospital now." Mia screamed, but the sound was swallowed by the darkness. Mia pushed through a narrow hallway, her breath hitching with every step. The walls here were different, peeling, covered with strange symbols scratched into the surface. She followed the path, hoping it would lead her back to safety. Instead, it brought her to an old ward, its entrance marked by a rusted sign, *psychiatric unit. Her heart sank as she stepped inside. The room was vast, lined with rows of small, grimy doors. Each one had a metal slot in the center, like a viewing window. Most of the doors were open, swinging gently as if moved by an unseen breeze. Mia's flashlight revealed glimpses of the rooms inside. Old hospital beds sat in eerie disarray, straps hanging loosely, as if someone, or something, had broken free. She tried not to look too closely, but she couldn't help noticing the dark stains on the mattresses and walls. She froze when she heard a soft creak behind her. Turning slowly, she saw one of the doors slam shut. Then another. And another. One by one, the doors were closing on their own, as though the building itself was alive. From inside the locked rooms came faint noises, whispers, laughter, and the occasional scream. Mia's stomach churned as she heard a low, guttural voice call out, "Why did you leave us?" She stumbled back, bumping into a closed door. Through the slot, she saw a figure sitting on the bed. It was a woman, her long, tangled hair covering her face. The woman didn't move but began humming the same haunting lullaby Mia had heard earlier. "Hello," Mia whispered, her voice barely audible. The woman's head snapped up, revealing hollow eyes and a twisted smile. "You don't belong here," she hissed. The lights flickered violently, and when they stabilized, the woman was gone. Mia gasped, her knees threatening to give out. She backed away, only to hear the sound of heavy chains dragging along the floor. The noise grew louder, echoing through the ward. Shadows moved in the corners of her vision, but every time she turned, there was nothing there. Mia ran toward the exit, but just as she reached the door, it slammed shut in her face. From behind her, a voice whispered, "You can never leave." She turned, and the shadows began to close in. Mia's hands shook as she pushed through another door, desperate to escape the shadows chasing her. She found herself in what looked like an old staff lounge. It was eerily quiet, the faint sound of dripping water breaking the silence. The room was filled with broken furniture, and cobwebs hung thick in every corner. She closed the door behind her and locked it, hoping for even a moment of safety. Her flashlight beam swept across the room, landing on a dusty table in the center. Papers were scattered across it, covered in what looked like old coffee stains, or was it blood? On the wall behind the table, she noticed something strange. Words were written in dark, smeared letters, as if scrawled in blood, Leave before it's too late. Mia's stomach churned. Too late for what? She whispered, her voice trembling. As if in response, the room grew colder. The light flickered, and she heard the soft sound of footsteps behind her. Turning quickly, she saw nothing but empty space. Yet, the feeling of being watched was undeniable. The dripping noise grew louder, echoing unnaturally. Mia followed the sound to a corner of the room. Her flashlight revealed a sink, its faucet broken. Thick, dark liquid dripped steadily from the spout. It wasn't water, it was blood. She stumbled back, bumping into the table. The papers flew into the air, revealing a photograph underneath. Mia picked it up, her hands trembling. It was an old staff photo of the hospital employees, all smiling. But as she looked closer, her heart dropped. The faces in the photo began to change, their eyes turning black and their smiles twisting into sinister grins. One of the figures in the photo was staring directly at her, its finger pointing as if accusing her of something. Suddenly, the lights in the room went out completely. Mia's flashlight sputtered and died, plunging her into darkness. Heavy breathing filled the air around her, followed by faint whispers. Footsteps approached, slow and deliberate. She backed into a corner, clutching the photograph. The footsteps stopped inches from her. Then, in the darkness, a voice whispered directly into her ear, "You're too late." The door she had locked creaked open on its own, and bloody footprints began appearing on the floor, leading out into the hallway. Mia's heart pounded in her chest as she stepped into the elevator, her hands still shaking from what she had just seen. The doors closed behind her with a soft hiss, and she pressed the button for the ground floor. She just wanted to escape. But the elevator didn't move. It was stuck, frozen between floors. The lights flickered and then went out, leaving her in total darkness. She felt the cold sweat on her skin as she reached for the emergency button, her fingers trembling. But before she could press it, a low, unsettling sound echoed from the corners of the elevator. It was a whisper, so soft she could barely hear it, "Mia." The voice was familiar, but she couldn't place it. The walls seemed to close in around her, and the air grew thick with an unexplainable heaviness. She spun around, her flashlight useless in the dark. Then, she saw something that made her freeze, a reflection in the elevator's mirrored walls. But it wasn't her reflection. It was a pale, hollow-eyed version of herself, staring back at her with a twisted grin. Mia's breath caught in her throat. She stepped back, her heart racing. The reflection didn't move with her, it stayed still, staring. "Who are you?" she asked, her voice barely a whisper. The reflection didn't answer. Instead, it began to mimic her every movement, but with a delay. When Mia raised her hand to wipe the sweat from her forehead, the figure in the mirror did the same. Only, this time, its hand didn't stop, it kept rising, reaching out of the mirror toward her. Mia gasped and stumbled backward. The elevator jolted, and the lights came back on. But now, the reflection was gone. Her breathing quickened. The elevator doors opened with a loud ding, revealing nothing but darkness. Mia hesitated for a moment, then stepped out, her feet echoing as she walked down a long, empty corridor. The walls here were cracked, the floor covered in dust. As she moved forward, the doors to the hospital slammed shut behind her, trapping her inside. She turned to run but froze when she saw it, the same figure, standing in the distance, watching her. It began to move toward her, its footsteps slow but deliberate. Mia's heart raced. The figure came closer, its face still hidden in the shadows. Then, it spoke, its voice a hollow, chilling echo. "Welcome to the hospital. You'll never leave." The hallway stretched on forever, and Mia knew, deep down, that she was trapped. As the darkness closes in, our journey tonight comes to an end, but the shadows still whisper their secrets, and some stories are better left untold, or are they? If you've made it this far, you've felt the chill of the unknown, and remember, this won't be our last meeting. The night is never truly silent, and there's always something lurking, watching, waiting. Until we cross paths again, stay vigilant, and sleep tight, if you can. If you enjoy this story, so please subscribe my channel and set bell icon on all. Also share my video to others and like my video as a appreciation. Thanks.